We are presenting to you today on behalf of the Team Defence Information Vanguard Group, a network of early career professionals from both the UK Ministry of Defence and industry. We aim to harness diversity of thought in a commercially neutral forum to provide perspective and analysis towards key programmes of work across defence. From looking at how the industry is perceived to the adoption of future technologies, to the ethics of AI and sustainability within defence, the Vanguard engages with a variety of stakeholders to provide a unique view and solutions to ongoing challenges in an ever-changing defence landscape. When we talk about achieving sustainability in our approaches to defence procurement, integrated logistics support, ILS, is not always the first discipline that defence may consider. Should it be that the disposal element of the CADMID cycle becomes an element with more of a focus on reuse and recycling, from CADMID to CADMIR? How much can we achieve if we look to reuse and recycle versus simply disposing of our equipment? The topic of sustainability is vast. Identifying how ILS can be interlinked with the environment and sustainability came after a series of discussions on what ILS meant to those of us working on this project. We explored ideas of the origins of the discipline, the ideal world of ILS versus its reality, and its impact on our humanitarian intervention practices. The environment has grown to be of huge concern on the international agenda, with large-scale conferences leading to international cooperation under the Paris Agreement, for example. Taking an issue of key concern, such as that of sustainability, was deemed important to stress the importance of ILS. Without support and support solutions, how can military equipment be guaranteed to be effective and last its lifetime? Similarly, how can we expect the global environment to remain sustainable and supported if we are not considering it in our approaches to procuring, developing, and implementing military equipment?
So what is ILS and why is it important across the sector? Like leaders throughout history, we've recognised the importance of logistics in aiding the development of our lines of defence. Former US military General Omar Bradley stated that amateurs study tactics, professionals study logistics. Former Royal Navy officer, Vice Admiral Sir Jeremy Blackham, continued this notion in stating that no matter how capable the equipment and how high the theoretical availability and how much potential it has, if it does not work when needed in combat, then it is virtually useless. The understanding here is that it is more than the what behind the introductions of a capability and piece of equipment. It is the how and why that matter. Are these introductions feasible? Will they remain sustainable throughout their life cycle? ILS is how we seek these answers.
In 1964 USA, ILS was defined as the harmony and coherence obtained between each of the elements necessary to assure the effective and economical support of a system or equipment at all levels of maintenance for its programmed life cycle, formalizing its concept and realizing it as a documented practice. By 1970, this had become an integral part of the US military's mindset to acquisition and operation, with all aspects of support now considered with the goal of achieving effective and economical assurance.
Before a definition existed, the most successful military leaders are those who have recognized the importance of logistics. Alexander the Great is quoted to have said, "My logisticians are a humorless lot. They know if my campaign fails, they are the first ones I will slay." It's important to clarify that we don't advocate for this kind of policy. Nevertheless, those who have recognized the importance of logistics as part of military preparations have been proven right, whereas military leaders who have neglected some elements of logistical considerations have been seen to pay the price, as evidenced by Napoleon's foray into Russia, a military campaign which saw his army of 422,000 soldiers decimated down to a mere 110,000.
Not too long after the birth of ILS, the international demand for superior weaponry, aircraft, ships, and tanks grew. The world watched as states began to engage in conflicts worldwide. From the Vietnam War to the First Gulf War, and interventions in Kosovo and Somalia, to interventions in Iraq and Afghanistan, there became a perceived need to create bigger and stronger machinery to win such wars in the pursuit of peace. With a higher demand worldwide, the need for more robust support solutions emerged. How were we to think that wars could be won with unsupported capabilities? As we're all aware, the world is in turmoil. Only 10 years ago, NATO was stating that there was unlikely to be another boots-on-the-ground conflict in Europe. Recently, we've witnessed huge quantities of defense equipment being sent to Ukraine to aid in their global fight against the Russian invasion. We're currently witness to hostile actors across the globe constantly strengthening through territorial expansion, both on land and at sea. Such expansions have led to an increase in the use of military capabilities by these actors and by Western nations in response, contributing to an increase in global CO2 emissions. For example, China's emissions in 2022 stood at over 12 billion tonnes, with the US in second, contributing 4 billion tonnes, and India in third, with 2 billion tonnes. The rise in the use of these military capabilities and their subsequent impact on the environment has been justified by the need to defend our allies, but also prepare for our own defence in such unprecedented times. We've also seen humanitarian crises exacerbated by adverse environmental conditions, leading to aid being unable to reach those who need it most. Compiled with the fact that global temperatures are on the rise, examples such as increased flooding across the Persian Gulf, the warmest January on record, and strong indications that the net zero 2050 target is appearing to be increasingly unachievable. Furthermore, 2024 acts as the year of elections across the globe, with over 60 different countries facing a potential change in leadership this year, potentially resulting in a significant impact upon environmental and sustainability policy worldwide.
Evolving over its 60-year lifetime, future development of ILS must include environmental sustainability at its core. Resources are lessening in supply and are more in demand than ever. If we don't seek solutions that optimizes our use of them or increase the efficacy of our development and delivery processes, we might not even get a chance to participate in preserving global peace. Applying ILS through a more holistic lens, the Mod Defense Standard 00600 defines it as a disciplined approach that influences the product design and develops a support system to optimize supportability and through-life costs. It delivers the initial and subsequent through-life support package and ensures continued optimization of the support system in light of any product or capability change. But how is this understanding of ILS used to achieve the government's sustainability targets?
If we identify the world as our resource, a source of all products, then we can recognise that resources are finite. There will come a day whereby such resources run low and scarcity levels increase. What could the consequences of this look like? Would there be more territorial conflict for demand over who owns what? If sustainability is not prioritised, then this potential scarcity of resource will spiral. But not only is it a matter of resource, it is also integral to think about how we use those resources. As stated, ILS is a supportability tool that seeks to ensure lifetime guarantee of capabilities in the most cost-effective and efficient way. Therefore, ILS could be the catalyst for ensuring that suitable plans are made to maximise natural resource without doing this at the expense of our own resource that is the Earth.
When debating issues of how we can meet sustainability goals, we must consider how we meet our present needs without compromising the future of our planet. Sustainability explores practices that can maintain or enhance the health of ecosystems and the global quality of life. ILS identifies ways in which capabilities can last their lifetime with minimal costs and unforeseen consequences. If we deep dive into the supportability of both the defence capability and the global ecosystem, we can recognise that there should be a balancing of economic, environmental and social considerations to ensure long-term well-being and resilience. But how is defence affected by the state of our global environmental climate?
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has stated that climate change will cause intensified ocean acidification, as well as very wet and dry weather events. Combine this knowledge with the data that demonstrates rising sea levels and an estimated 50% of the global population experiencing water scarcity, and we have problems that require humanitarian aid. Aid often delivered through military capabilities alongside aid workers and charities. But how can we expect our various capabilities to survive across the different climates if we do not consider the effects that such environments can have? I.e., if we're expecting our ships to last in more acidic waters, have specific coatings to the surfaces been considered to avoid rapid wear and tear when deployed? Have our aircraft been fitted with the appropriate de-icing equipment for colder climates? or are land-based capabilities provided with the appropriate measures to cope with rising temperatures? Without ILS, we could see gaps in our abilities to cope with the ever-changing environment in which we live. The core question of this discussion centres on the role of ILS in developing truly sustainable capabilities for our armed forces. Two key points to keep in mind pertain to government goals of net zero targets in decreasing global emissions of CO2 by 50% to meet the 1.5 degrees target. The second point is considering how the defence sector is to respond to the projected increase in demand for rare earth materials of 700% by 2040, as estimated by the International Energy Agency in 2021. If these are two key major points of discussion, how does ILS become implemented to promote solutions?
We mentioned at the beginning of this video that the CADMID cycle could be coined differently to adopt a more eco-conscious approach by becoming more commonly known as the CADMIR cycle. It is important to highlight that the MOD's preparation for the disposal element of CADMID places emphasis on the importance of sustainability, especially when awarding contracts. Methods of how we dispose of capabilities can vary between recycling the materials used, opportunities for capability reuse, and sale to other countries or industries to foster a more sustainable supply chain. But how does ILS go one step further to guarantee better sustainable practices? Defence Standard 00600 highlights the key activities for ILS that should be covered to ensure that logistics have been thoroughly considered. Some of these activities surround disposal. 1. Validate and update disposal strategy and disposal plan, and 2. The disposal plan should be executed within the regulation and the cost.
In 2021, the UK government announced that it set a target of being net zero on carbon emissions by 2050. In support of this aim, the Ministry of Defence has agreed to implement a Sustainable Cultures and Behaviours programme by 2025. As an organisation, this draws focus into not only how the defence industry is physically implementing change, but how they're rewiring the approaches of staff behaviours and processes to ensure sustainability is considered early on and with high importance. Not only will this help reduce emissions and decrease the negative impact on the planet, but it will explore how climate change and sustainability will affect roles and career pathways.
Regarding ILS, it has a fine role to play in this equation. Not only will ILS staff consider sustainability in the early stages of projects, especially by adhering to legal requirements, but they will extend this approach throughout the life cycle, up until the disposal stage. For instance, DESA has in recent years had a large role to play by reusing equipment via sales and recycling equipment so it can be utilised on another project. By forging relationships with institutions such as DESA, the ILS function can ensure that sustainability is being upheld and they're actively engaging in sustainable cultures and behaviours from the outset.
Turning to ILS processes specifically, more concrete implementation of sustainability concepts may be required if they are to become a core feature of defence contracting. The real-term impact this has on project sustainability can be limited, particularly due to the inconsistent application of ILS practices across the sector. This begs the question, what else can be done? The options available vary in terms of the level of commitment they demand, both from the MOD in terms of contract management and their industry partner in terms of targets. At the softer end of the scale, so to speak, we have consistent implementation of the sustainable elements already incorporated into MOD ILS. At the harder end, there is the more widespread incorporation of sustainability-focused incentivization into support contracts. The latter option might come in the form of standardized metrics imposing a maximum level of calculated carbon emissions or targets for implementing sustainable technology, potentially extending to subcontractor relationships as well.
Being able to attain the level of bargaining power required to adopt these commitments in reality is entirely another matter. However, since there is no model contract and the forms contracts can take are highly varied, the capacity for incorporating measured or even abstract commitments to stringent sustainable practices may be limited, particularly where single source contracting is necessary. The paramount concern at the heart of public procurement remains securing value for money, meaning that compromises may come to the detriment of elements regarded as less essential than financial pressures and national security. To this end, the ability of ILS to mitigate environmental impacts is curtailed to an extent by the wider state of the sector, and a culture shift across defence will likely be needed before ILS can play its part in reducing the sector's environmental impact. The UK government has established targets for achieving a more sustainable looking future across the global environment. Through the government's Net Zero by 2050 initiative, the MOD has committed itself to achieving this by adopting a climate lens. This means that robust climate assumptions will be drawn from accurate data to then influence the ways in which equipment is made and further used in operational environments.
The element of support in the procurement of military equipment is climbing its way up the agenda. There is a new recognition of its importance and how the correct use of ILS can offer the most cost-effective and efficient routes for optimal procurement. We are concluding that when we apply the notion of ILS to the global environment and more closely to the issue of sustainability, comparisons can be made. As we touched on earlier in this presentation, the Earth can be looked at like a resource, or in the defence world as a capability. When we look at the procurement of our capabilities, we identify the support necessary to ensure that it lasts its lifetime in the most cost-effective way. Support solutions to ensure our world survives whilst we also remain operational and available to respond to our defence needs on demand should be one of our key focuses. Without the world and its natural resources, such defence capabilities would not be possible. Therefore, how we sustainably source our capabilities should be front and centre of how we move forward. To undo the effects of climate change so far, we need to be proactive in seeking the most eco-friendly solutions. As mentioned, efforts are being made to recognise the importance of environmental changes we are witnessing and how we go about reducing the negative impacts that could exacerbate should nothing be done. The government's net zero targets by 2050, or DESA's approach of disposing of materials through recycling and selling on to other industries, are effective approaches to achieving such goals that UK Defence has adopted. If ILS is applied from the earliest possible stage of the CAD cycle, then such approaches to acting sustainably can be maximised throughout the life cycle of a capability, leading to fewer consequential effects on the wider environment. The CAD cycle could also indeed be referred to more commonly as the CAD cycle. This is a phrase that was found during initial research and has further been explored by the Defence Climate Change and Sustainability Committee. Emphasising the element of reuse or recycle over simply disposing of is something that should be considered through ILS approaches to defence procurement. If we want to be truly sustainable in our practice and retain the sustainability lens, then refocusing our angle upon the idea of reusing and recycling is a key move. So how can ILS play its part in aiding the development of truly sustainable capabilities? The answers that we have presented to you lie within, firstly, ensuring that ILS is considered throughout the entirety of a capability's life cycle, and secondly, by redesigning the vision from simply acquiring capabilities to using sustainable lenses to ensure that minimal harm is being done to the environment across every stage of the CAD cycle, or perhaps in a newer version known as the CAD cycle.